Hello, I'm Dale Matthews. I'm joined by Mike Jones, and this is where all the cool kids are.
Yes. Good evening, Dale.
Good evening. We are the place to go for news about local politics and analysis of it. It's the only place for analysis. What? There's no competition. You're going to listen to Kjo? I don't think so. Okay, so we're going to go all over the southern part of the state for tonight's stories, but they're all related back to us. So we're not violating our own rule that we put on ourselves about somebody needs to talk about local politics. We're going to be doing that. But you will be able to see for yourself that the tentacles of the problems here are reaching out to other places. Just when you thought you said goodbye to some kind of people, dealing with them one at a time, they then show up somewhere else, like Oregon City. Really?
Hmm.
Yeah, yes, they do. They're expanding. We need to deal with these problems that we have here, and you are well aware of what they are if you watch this show. We need to deal with them in a more permanent basis. Now, I'm not trying to be
Permanent? No,
ominous.
no, 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 no.
No, no, not to
Won't
be
be any of
ominous.
that.
No, no, what I mean is clear out the refrigerator. Look, if you wish about elections, and I hope that you have filled this guy out. See, this is empty. I hope you have filled this guy out and sent it in. You can take it in here
I
pretty
did
soon.
not. I've
Oh,
decided that I'm not voting anymore.
lovely. Okay. By next Tuesday, before
Mhm.
next Tuesday, just fill this out, and then oh, that's right. Mike can't vote on the
I
on the
can't vote
grass
on
fed
that.
sales tax. That's right. Well, I
Makes me
can.
ill.
So, and I did. So, fill this out, you guys, or ask your neighbor to fill it out. Not for you.
Yes.
Remind your neighbor to vote
Ask your
tonight.
neighbor for their ballot so you can fill it out for them.
I don't know. Look, if you
Yes,
insist,
do that.
you can refer to us, if you absolutely insist, as the two one-eyed monkeys hanging on a balloon. But like that
Um,
famous, somewhat famous
wow.
political example, we have always been right about how the vote was going to turn out. I'll say that in a slightly different way without the monkey. Since I was publishing and printing and etc. until the courier kept stealing them, literally stealing them. First Friday newspaper, which came out, on the first Friday of each month. And now with Mike and with our website, which is coming up on 3 years now. That'll be in February once the legislature goes back. It just turns out by accident. That's it. We have always been right every single time on every election.
Well, I would encourage you then to forget about predicting elections and start picking stocks then because that's a little bit more lucrative and much less boring.
Yes, well, that's right. But would you think that after a while, even if it was the infamous monkey I was just talking about, that someone might say, oh, well, actually, that's a pretty impressive track record. No, they can't say that. They have to say nobody ever watches. One lady says, you don't have a website. Nobody ever looks at your website. Nobody cares. Nobody's there. You don't have an audience. Everything is
Yeah, whatever.
whatever. But we've always been right. And so maybe this is the first time. Mike has a slightly different opinion, but maybe it's the first time we'll be wrong.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that the thing is going to pass or anything. I'm just saying that I think to predict this in the same way that you're going to predict countywide elections in terms of tax levies, this is not the same thing
No,
because the city passes those levies every single time. Every
that's correct.
single time.
Now, we're not going to say what the percentages be. We're awful, terrible on percentages.
No,
We're always right about the vote. So
no.
anyway, this will be another one. And every time I step up to the podium at the weekly business session, every night when we're on, and in 2 days, it'll be 300 shows in a row. Every night
Amazing.
that we're on, every single time we do this, we lay it all out there.
Yeah.
And we can always be wrong. So far, we've never been wrong. So you're
Oh,
watching the right place.
wow, wow,
Well, what is the truth?
wow.
What is the truth?
That's perhaps going a little too far. That
We've
we're right.
never been wrong on
Oh,
predicting an election in this
okay,
country.
predicting elections, but I thought that sentence had
Never
ended,
wrong.
and we
Ah,
were
forget
starting
that
in a whole
idea.
nother.
We're
Yes,
wrong all the time.
yeah, we're probably wrong every night. We just,
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
just
just nobody realizes because they don't know any better.
right,
Okay,
exactly.
all right. So there was a place where the Daily Courier was wrong. The Daily Courier, because we review media too. They hate that, but we review them as well as the commissioners. And so that's something that the commissioners and the Daily Courier have in common is they hate us, at least the management of both. Okay, so the Daily Courier had written an article. It was on the 17th, I think. It said former Grants Pass city manager. See, this is about the infection spreading. David Fraser, made racial remarks according to complaint. Okay, so David Fraser was fired from his job at Oregon City. Remember this, Oregon City. Okay, there's a reason I'm asking you to remember this. So this guy moves on to Oregon City after being fired here. He wasn't fired. He quit for. No, he didn't. He was fired. And then the Courier picked up an AP story, and they bylined the story. You know what that means? By AP and the Daily Courier. Oh, well, it makes them look like they're doing actual reporting, which is okay. They didn't say who.
What do
But
they add a line to it or something?
oh, I don't know. Maybe they added whole paragraphs.
Yeah.
Okay, but it was datelined Oregon City, and it said something about a complaint filed against Oregon City's top administrators, top administrator, city manager David Fraser, blah 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 blah. Okay, and so we reported the fact because we found it elsewhere, because we actually went to the Oregon City newspaper and we reported on what they said. I got to take the word of the Daily Courier, even if they do have a new reporter, is brand new. Okay, a couple of them. I have high hopes for them, but we reported that from the source. So remember, it was written by the AP and the Daily Courier. So this weekend, this is delicious. This weekend, the Daily Courier did something they don't do very often, in that they ran a slight retraction, a clarification, if you will. And their clarification said that the Oregon State, let me call this up. I've got this in front of me here someplace. Just a moment, please.
Hello.
Yeah, shut up.
He's calling it up.
Yeah, okay, right. And they call it up, and no, they're not calling it up. You're confusing me. Okay, it says
We got to get a better teleprompter here.
Oregon City mayor says Fraser was not fired over that. He was fired, but not for that. Oh. And so they go on just to say, in a story on October 15th, written by the Associated Press.
Yes.
Now suddenly.
Well, yeah. Now that something's wrong, and we had nothing to do with that.
No. Why would you think that? Why, we just want to let you know what a mistake the Associated Press made. Yeah. So apparently there's a little bit more to the story, and once somebody actually has a chance to read into it, they find out, well, the guy's still gone. Okay, but there was more to the story than the Courier is willing to admit to, which is why I brought this up, because we have not made mistakes in our predictions. The Courier makes mistakes all the time in what they write, and this isn't the fault of Editor Campuzano or Jules Rogers. This is the editor, Kevin Whittison.
Yeah, and listen, sometimes in their political predictions, they use that stupid poll that's on their website.
Oh, that fake poll? It's fake. Yeah. We've proven it's fake.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say it's fake because we like it. I mean, we have proven, mathematically proven, it's fake.
It's not fake. It's just not scientific.
It's not
There,
correct.
yeah, right. Exactly. There's a
Not
difference.
that's not
It's a
scientific.
poll.
You can go in and you can vote as many times. You're not supposed to
Yes,
be able to, but
they
you
put
can. That's not a
polls.
poll.
They put polls on websites and stuff all the
I
time,
got
and
a place
every
for them to
single
put their poll.
yeah, well, every time you log into those, you can vote again
That's
and
not a
rack up the
poll.
numbers.
That's just like if every time you
That's
took
what
out
they
one of
call
these,
it.
you could vote again, and that's
Oh, and
not a vote.
right.
That's not a
Well,
vote.
I'll tell you what. Um, the Courier's calling it a poll,
Well,
and
yeah, there you go. Of course, they're
right,
it should say for entertainment purposes only, just like
right.
the astrology report.
Of course, because it's wrong every single time.
Well,
And,
it's also that. That's and so recently, at least in recent years, almost every time, so has the editorial board of the Courier been. They
yeah.
seem to almost always pick the wrong candidate.
Well, maybe their prediction will be a little bit different this time since they're against the sales tax.
Yeah, some of them are, and some aren't against the sales tax. Right? They have come out with an editorial about that, but I am not at all sure that Kevin Whittison, who makes the day-to-day decisions at the Courier, is against this. I think he's probably on the other side. But
Well, wait a minute though.
he's on the editorial board, but I think he was outvoted. That's my personal opinion.
Oh, gotcha. So the management is against it almost to the point where they were going to sue the city. Wasn't that true?
That's what the publisher said. The publisher,
Right.
in an odd twist of words, the publisher is the guy that's in charge of getting new advertising or something.
Yeah,
Right. It's so weird.
Yeah,
But
it is weird.
anyway, yeah, he did say that to that little backroom meeting of the city council guys, and I would imagine Roy Lindsay wasn't too happy to hear that.
Yeah. Well,
Roy's put everything on the line for this. Okay, so that's a story that just keeps giving. Okay, so there's that one. Then I got another one here for you. Let's see. As we march across the country, so we were looking for some materials to go together with some other things we were reporting today, and I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. But first, we're going to play a little video for you now. This little video is from a fellow that is appearing in front of the Gold Hill City Council. Okay, and they had a water main break there that was big time. Okay, it's not so much about Gold Hill as super important to your future. It is to some people, those who live.
Dale loves Gold Hill now.
Nah, that's not it.
All about Grants Pass. It's Gold Hill is his favorite place.
But this is tied in with the bigger story to lay the groundwork for this. The current clerk. Did I ever mention to you that he's running for office again? The current clerk, back with the previous board of county commissioners. This current guy, he came to the county commissioners and said, "I've just got this scathingly brilliant idea." I'm paraphrasing. And we're going to start competing with private enterprise. And we have staff where they have some time on their hands. Oh, really? Well, Mike has a solution for that.
Yeah. Does this shock anybody, by the way?
Right.
That county, city, and county employees have time on their hands?
Right. Okay. So he says there are a couple of businesses in town that do some of the same kind of stuff that we charge for at the county. I think it was having to do with passports, those kinds of things. And so we can do that at a lower price. Well, no kidding. All your overhead is paid for.
Overhead. That's right.
Right. And so he comes to the county commissioners and says, "This is a wonderful way to bring in more money to my department. And all we have to do is compete with private enterprise."
Right. Fantastic idea.
So even the commissioners at the time said, no, we're not going to be doing that. Now, Art Harvey, sorry, not sharp enough to understand why that's not a good idea, because everybody comes up with a stupid idea every once in a while. Me teaming up with Mike. I mean, everybody comes up with a dumb idea every once in a while. Mm-hmm. And so you could say to this guy, okay, look, it seemed like a good idea last night. Not so much this morning. So he goes off and he sits and he talks with our former legal counsel, Steve Rich. The connections are all there because Steve Rich is the advisor to these guys at Gold Hill. He was moonlighting while he was working for the county, and he still gives advice to the city of Gold Hill. Yeah, he makes the commute. He was on this tape that we played for you. And so the clerk, Art Harvey, comes back the next week. I really, really think that we ought to do this because, boy, there's a business across the street that is kind of vulnerable. Okay, I'm paraphrasing, but we can charge a lot less than them, and then we can make the money instead. They're right across the street. This will be very convenient. Well, see, Steve Rich has given him advice that this will work. There's no reason why you shouldn't do it. This is the same guy that told the county commissioners, don't worry about breaking the meeting laws. Nobody's enforcing them. Don't worry about keeping track of what's safe or unsafe in our county because ignorance is bliss. We have him on tape saying this. Okay. So he says, well, we can post we can just put it up on the wall to post that this meeting is happening. And it says right in the rules, they were so specific in the Oregon State revised statutes that it says, they even asked the question, is it good enough to post it on a wall? No. And he's using the same example. This was Steve Rich, 20 years of Steve Rich. And so Art Harvey comes back again and he says, we can do this. And the commissioners say, no, just like we said last time, we're not going to be competing with private enterprise. Okay. It wasn't enough to say something the equivalent of that wasn't a good idea because now he's back for the second week in a row. So I look on the weekly business session agenda for the following week. There's Art Harvey again. He's going to come in and talk about it again. He's been told twice that this is not going to happen, but he's coming back again. So I called the guy that runs the business across the street. And I said, you got to get your tail over here, bud, because this guy's bringing it up again. And sure enough, Art Harvey comes in. He's running for office. And he says, really, 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 we got to do this because we've got an opportunity to bring more money into my department. My people are not that busy. We've got terrific low overhead. Why, we could just beat the pants off of, he didn't say that in a meeting. I am paraphrasing. We could just beat the pants off the competition, especially this company that's across the street. And the guy that owns it says, this is a family-owned company. And when we have to pay the light bill or the bill for making photocopies, we have to pay it out of our pockets.
Yeah.
And my tax dollars are now going to this guy, this character, to compete with us. That's not right.
Yes, of course. It's silly.
So he wasn't happy. And he went away kind of mumbling to himself, like, you're not listening to me. No. You're not getting the point. That's not okay. Now, in a somewhat related story, like with the same advice, the same guy writing up the contract, Steve Rich. Here's a little video from Gold Hill with a fellow that's doing this water works for them, explaining he's owner of a private company out of Cave Junction. Now, see, we're not going to be able to post this on the Cave Junction Facebook sites because Dan Mancuso out there says, Gold Hill has absolutely, what was his exact quote? Gold Hill has absolutely no relationship at all to Cave Junction. So this guy's from Cave Junction. We're not going to be able to post it there because they're part of a group of people that are going around to each of the Facebook sites and trying to get our videos completely removed forever. Dan Mancuso runs the newspaper there. Why would you pay Dan Mancuso that runs the newspaper, pay him for a weekly newspaper when you can get it for free and see? You don't need to listen to what we say. Forget about us. Please don't. But you can see the video for yourself. He's dead set against this and was part of a group of people that, including William T. Campbell and goofball, goofadettes, or whoever the rest of those people are, were saying, we don't want anything that's not originating in. What's the matter with
That
you? It was about
goofball
marijuana.
Goofadess guy should have his
It's a woman.
name legally changed. You know, I
Yeah.
mean,
Well,
that's really
because
not
it
very
was
good.
about marijuana. It was about their meeting about statewide rules about marijuana. Yeah, there's no one in Cave Junction interested in marijuana. What's the matter with you? Really?
Okay.
Well, there's your Dan Mancuso, the guy that told me that the reason he wasn't going to run a story is because his advertisers wouldn't like it. What kind of newspaper is that? Well, I'll tell you what kind. That's the sneak preview. But okay. So, and that's what we do on this show is we point fingers at people.
And we eventually get around to playing the video that we've been teasing for minutes now.
What video? What video? Minutes. Okay, so here is this poor guy, and listen, you see, based on everything I've said up to this date, 300 days worth, you see whether this poor guy is getting a good deal or not. This is his perception of what he needs to do to keep his contract with Gold Hill. Go ahead, brother.
Would our people be cheaper than your people?
It depends on what you're talking about, I suppose.
I mean, just stuff. I mean,
just doing the green and clean. And,
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that. You know, I think we're probably about equal. You're probably more expensive than us, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Can you give us a price difference of what our own people, you know, what their total wages is versus?
It would be a fully loaded cost.
Yeah, and
I want to know what the in number would be.
Yeah, we in the beginning wanted to make sure that we weren't appearing to have personal enrichment by displacing your employees. So we can't have we can't cost less than you. We're not supposed to.
One question, quick question. As I understand it, you can't compete with, your goal is not to undercut the price of the Gold Hill employees, right?
That's true.
But if you tried to do that, could you do that?
Well, this is what, if you look at the contract and stuff like that, part of it's agreement from your people and then my people is the fact that we can temporarily do whatever we need to do to get the job done, because you can't just let these things run on their own.
Just stop.
You can't stop.
But it sounds like you're being put in just an impossible place, because Councilor Silva is asking you to. Asking you why aren't you cheaper, and you're saying, well, our whole goal is not to be.
I didn't say that at all.
Oh, okay, that's what I heard. I'm sorry.
No, I said, is it cheaper? Not why are you?
Because it sounds like it could be.
I know what his contract says. I've read it many times.
We went through it.
Right.
And so, Karen, you've been an operator, and you've been an operator in a really big facility. One of the things that makes it easier for me is the fact that you guys may not understand that you're not just training. I mean, our Travis is being taught particular skill sets and stuff like that, whether it's confined space entry, your staff. Our goal is to bring a whole lot of communities together and do that one-on-one, where you have the one-on-one for 20% of the time, but 80% of the time you can do just fine getting them all in the same room. You know, and getting that experience and that training. And the safety thing is what scared me to death here. I mean, the liability of having a flashlight in my mouth digging up a main was just terrifying.
Yeah, you shouldn't have a flashlight in your mouth. That's not good.
His main point was they've now convinced this guy, he's signed a contract, that private enterprise must be at a higher price than the government. That's backwards.
I think it was sort of here's what it seemed. My impression of what I saw was that they don't want his prices to be higher, or I'm sorry, lower than the local contractors for the same.
No, sorry. He's their choice of contractor because he's got the expertise that they need. Okay, so it kind of obviates everything else. But you just heard him say that he knew, according to his contract, he's not allowed to charge less than the city would pay. He can't compete. Well, see, and the story I was telling you, which is somewhat related, I think, is that you can't compete with private enterprise. Now, the city of Gold Hill is not suggesting that they'll go out and take business away from private contractors. But there is a connection here, and that this poor guy is under a contract written by Steve Rich that says that he cannot set his prices lower than the city.
Yeah, and that seems to be a little bit in conflict with the thing that you were talking about there in Grants Pass.
Yeah. And the guy behind him was saying, well, could you be lower? Yeah.
Well,
but in order to keep the contract, the guy must figure out a way that he could be more expensive than the city.
Or at least on a par with them. But here's an interesting thing. If he could not be less expensive than the city, then you would expect that the city's, the bar there for the city would be, you would think that there's no way that he could even get down to the price that the city could do it at, because they don't have the overhead. They don't have, there's no, let's say you're using a backhoe, they own the backhoe outright. They own the building outright. They pay no taxes on either one of those situations. They don't have the overhead. And if somehow after all of that, he can survive at all, charging what they would charge is amazing to me.
That's why he's crawling through a pipe with a flashlight in his mouth.
Right.
Assuming all of that risk. And earlier in the meeting, they were talking, do you have any kind of safety? Well, it's pretty hard to afford to have a safety, as officer and all. Well, what about the idea of how much did it cost to put this? Well, I put that in. I had to put that in at cost. At cost?
Well, here, let me clear something up here for you, Dale.
Oh, brother.
This guy's not working for free. Okay.
No, of course not.
So understand that if it wasn't profitable for him to be going to Gold Hill to do this job, he would not be doing it.
That's correct.
Okay.
But he's under contract to keep his prices at a certain level.
Right.
Or they're going to drop him like a hot potato.
And again, if that were not profitable, he would not have that contract. There's two sides to a contract.
What is he risking? He's risking the things that could happen to him or to his employees crawling through a pipe with a flashlight in their mouth.
Yeah, I believe that risk exists whether you're city or whether you're this guy.
Well, probably dogs do it all the time. But my point is that he's going to figure out a way to make some kind of profit off of this, or he's not going to be doing business. But where are you going to cut? And Mike, you're quite right. How in the world can he do that at a lower price than the city?
Well, that just shows you the inefficiency of the city. There should be no possible way for him to compete.
That's right.
With their situation. If the city is going to charge that much, even after all of their overhead is taken care of and everything, that just shows you how inefficient. You would be way better off having one central office with them subbing every single thing out. If what that guy just said is the truth.
Well, and they do let people speak occasionally, and they said, does anyone else have anything to say? And I had no plans to say anything. Why would I? But I said, I told them the little story, and I said, so I really think that part of this is kind of backwards. Really it should be that the government is not competing with private enterprise. And the lady he was pointing to the lady, says, you used to run a facility. She used to run a kind of a water treatment facility. Mm-hmm. And when I said that, they all kind of looked at me, and she says, well, I think we can figure that out. Apparently not.
Yeah. Then why are we having this conversation?
Exactly. Okay. So there was a very interesting article, I think it was interesting, in the Medford Mail Tribune. So I went to the Medford Mail Tribune to see the kinds of things that they were saying, and it was about marijuana and banking. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to use a little example, and then Mike's going to show some video, and pretty soon it's all going to be the Mike show. So,
right.
Yeah, one of these days.
I don't think so.
So there are a couple of unique rules. You could say unique, strange, bizarre, unique rules about Oregon, and one is we allow physicians and the right to die in Oregon. That's against the law federally. and we allow marijuana, and it's a Schedule I drug. So, I mean, they're not supposed to do that according to federal law. And that has an effect on things like how the heck are you going to do banking? And we've talked about this. I'm going to use a slightly different example. I'm laying it out there. I'm taking a chance here. And let's suppose that someone in Oregon came up with a new kind of motorcycle helmet, one that really caught on in Oregon. Wow, I love that motorcycle helmet, but it doesn't meet the federal standards, or at least not now, or we'll test it for a few years and we'll see if it meets our standards. You know that rule. But the legislature, for some reason, it's not a perfect analogy, but the legislature and the people in general vote 80% against Cheryl Walker's junk ordinances. No, 80% in favor of this new kind of helmet, but it doesn't meet federal standards. But we like it. And so in Oregon, it's available and it's legal. Now, you have a couple of companies. Nike comes in here. They're already here. And they say, we're going to start making those things. Now, if it's against the law federally to sell these things, if they make a bundle of money, they can't put it in the bank because their assets could be seized. It's against the law. They're kind of a mild version of organized crime.
Yeah, but I think the difference there, Dale, is that some of these laws that have to do with the banking and stuff have to do with like asset forfeiture and things like that as it relates to drugs specifically.
Yes, I was trying to use an analogy, but okay, so it fell apart.
But no, what I'm saying is somebody producing an illegal helmet in the state of Oregon is not going to meet the same brick wall because they're with the marijuana thing, you're tripping a particular thing.
But there are going to be people who say, hey, not only do I not want these helmets, I don't even want people driving motorcycles. Let's ban all of it.
So you heard it here first. Dale is for the expansion of regulation. So if you make an illegal helmet, you can't have a bank account. That's what Dale wants. And there'll be all kinds of things that you might be manufacturing, which the feds don't like. Somehow, and so we're going to pull your bank, or actually, we're just going to seize your bank account. How about that?
It will have a special hole in it for smoking while you're driving your motorcycle. Okay, all right.
Yes.
That's not a motorcycle, honey. That's a chopper. Yeah. Okay. All right. So anyway, so you've got a bit of a problem if you want to be involved in the fastest growing industry in the state. Legal industry. It's legal. You've got a bit of a problem because you've got nowhere to put your money. You're forced to file about how you're paying your people. But if you file about how you're paying your people, you're in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, and I thought I was not going to have any interest in this. And
yes,
after watching the video, and I listened to, we're going to play about 6.5 minutes of this radio interview. The stuff that they get into, this is the tentacles of government go out into all kinds of things. So when they say that you can't have a bank account, that seems okay. Well, it can't have a bank account. We'll have to find some way around that. Oh no, there's all kinds of pitfalls in this situation.
Let's hear some of them.
Yes. Okay. Well, here's a little video here from the Mail Tribune piece here first.
To the double standard the IRS is putting on us. So they have their hand out to be paid. They even have protocols now set for accountants on how to deal with a cannabis business, and yet they don't allow any deductions outside of cost of goods. So no standard deductions like running your business with employees. If it's in the dispensary part, it's considered trafficking. We're in the trafficking business. So federally, there's no write-offs for those employees outside of the hours that they're maybe rolling joints or processing products that it can go into the cost of goods. There's also no write-offs for all of our employees' wages. The feds have their hands out in a big way, but yet they're not allowing us to write those off.
Yeah, and the
That's
video,
a weird video.
Yeah, it is a weird video. It's the editing on that was really odd. But I mean, they're showing the guy standing in front of a safe, and I thought, sure, they have to have an on-site safe for that. Well, this radio interview goes into greater detail that some of these people have multiple safes and safes inside of safes, and they even refer to armed security on site there, which I thought was pretty interesting. And anyway, here is that piece here right now.
Hi, I'm Dave Miller. This is Think Out Loud on OPB. Starting on Thursday, you'll be able to buy pot at medical marijuana dispensaries without a prescription in Oregon. If Washington and Colorado are any indication, those dispensaries could have a booming business. If so, they might have a new problem on their hands. What to do with thousands and thousands of dollars of cash? That's because federal laws have made it nearly impossible for marijuana-related companies to use banks. It's one of the issues that was addressed at the Cannabis Finance Boot Camp this weekend. I'm joined now by one of the people behind that boot camp, Simone Simaluka Radzins, his business partner with New Era CPAs and a founder of that boot camp. I'm also joined by Ken Burke, CEO of PayQuick, and Amy Margolis, shareholder at Emerge Law Group and founder of Oregon Cannabis PAC and the Oregon Cannabis Association. It's great to have the three of you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amy, let's start with you. The Treasury Department said a little while ago that they're not going to prosecute banks who are handling money from the legal sale of marijuana if they follow state laws and stick to this other set of federal guidelines outlined by the Justice Department. That was a few years ago. But given that, what's wrong? Why won't banks do business with marijuana companies?
So many banks consider that really to be a yellow light and not the green light that they were hoping for. So it didn't completely drop the restrictions around suspicious activity reporting and due diligence requirements. It was almost like a do not pass go yellow light. It was a really strange thing for them to release, and it didn't provide the kind of comfort that banks were looking for to move forward. And then we have some examples like MBank, who started working with those clients and either encountered enough issues or found the due diligence requirements to be so strenuous that they just were not able to comply. At some point, it becomes so challenging for banks that they're just not willing to engage with these clients.
That was, MBank was a pretty public Gresham-based bank that earlier this year, they had been doing a lot of business with marijuana related businesses. What exactly did the federal government require of them that made that business too difficult?
Well, I think any bank working with these clients has come across some of these stumbling blocks. Because it's a yellow light and not a green light, what has happened is that the banks are required, as part of the suspicious activity reports and the due diligence to make sure there's no money laundering going on, it requires so much intensive interaction with these clients, with their businesses, with their QuickBooks, that you can see where that might not balance it out.
How could a bank know that a particular dispensary or a producer is doing things legally?
So that's a very good question, and part of the reason why it's really a yellow light. So you can require things. I mean, I don't think it's an impossibility. You can require things like licenses, and then you depend on the licensing agency like OHA or soon to be OLCC to make sure that they're auditing them, that these people are in compliance, that they're not breaking the laws. But it is a challenge, and the deeper dive you take into their finances, the more expensive and burdensome it becomes.
So, Simone, what options do these companies have?
So if they don't have a bank account, the options are just making sure that they have their accounting records in place. I think that's like the biggest thing when we talk to our clients. They're like, oh my God, I'm going to do all cash. Like, what does that mean? And we're like, well, okay, you have to set in some internal controls. Like, you have to figure out internally how you're going to be able to manage that, but you always still have to account for things. You still need to make sure that you've got like a system in place, that you've got a point of sale system, that everything is kind of dialed in the records, and that you're kind of reconciling all that cash.
Can you give us a sense for just how much cash we're talking about at a successful store, say in Washington right now?
In Washington, oh, my business partner could probably better know about that. But like, I mean, over 100,000 probably in a week. I mean, so it's a lot of cash. It's a lot. And
what are the physical realities of dealing with that much cash?
well, you're a target for criminals. I mean, really, it's the public safety. I mean, if you think about it, if I was a criminal, it's just like you just target a dispensary, right? But then also just forgetting about that internally, you've got your employees, and there's something that like accountants call the fraud triangle. So I mean, you're dealing with pot and you're dealing with cash. Those are two very easy things that maybe if an employee, is feeling that they need a little bit of extra money, it's easy to take, right? So on that standard, you're just really focused on putting in some controls with your employees just to make sure, like, okay, how many safes do we have at our dispensary? Who has access to those safes? Do we have, like we've got our till, we've got our cash registers, we have a safe underneath that, and then you'll have a master safe. So it's really making sure that you've got dual people doing different, doing the same thing, doing cash counts, that somebody's checking, somebody's approving, and not letting one person do too much.
How much boils down to security as well?
Absolutely.
Big people with big guns and cameras?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think, and Amy probably can mention a little bit more, but the OLCC is requiring, that there is some type of security, right? I mean, they've got seed to sale tracking. So you're going to be able to track the marijuana plant from the very seed to the end sale to the customer. So there's a lot of security companies that are going to be required to be working with these dispensaries too.
So you have to remember, all of that cash does not just reside at the dispensary,
Exactly.
right? So that cash leaves with growers and it leaves with processors and wholesalers. So even though there are security requirements at the physical location of the dispensary and the physical location of the grows or the processing facilities, that doesn't mean that people are still not driving around with duffel bags of cash. So it is the coming and going that proves to be the most dangerous, I think, for these industry people.
If you just
Duffel bags of cash.
Duffel bags of cash. I'm telling you, the state would not permit any other business to operate this way. There's no way they would allow you. They don't want you doing cash transactions because they want every single transaction to be trackable. With these cash transactions, half of your business could be completely under the table.
Duffel bags of cash. Let me give you an example. It's doing some research for this story. We research our stories. What a concept. If they could just think to do that out in Cave Junction. Okay, so I'm looking up something here, right here, from the Oregonian. Real brief. David Morse looked at a former coffee shop in Oregon City. Remember I told you to keep track? Oregon City. This has to do with David Frazier, who was working at Oregon City and he was a city manager. See, he was looking at his coffee shop, and okay, I try to include everybody, including the fast people like you. In Oregon City, when he was planning to open his medical marijuana dispensary, the rent was $3,500, and Clackamas County officials had at the time placed a moratorium on the sale of medical marijuana inside county limits. He passed on the idea, thinking he'd rather have a more stable business location, like maybe one that might not come back next year with another city sales tax. A year later, he noticed the spot was on the market again. For the rights to a lease and a medical marijuana license, the seller wanted $1.2 million.
Wow.
Now, we're in a county where there's some talk occasionally about economic development, about growing things again. Why can't we grow things and chop them down like we used to? We could. I don't smoke marijuana. Mike doesn't smoke marijuana. I'm not interested in marijuana, but I am interested in the ramifications of marijuana. I'm interested in economic development. I'm interested in a legal crop that you can't let people look at. You can't even look at it. You must build a fence around your medical marijuana grow that's taller than fences are allowed to be in the state of Oregon. You're going to violate the rules again.
Well,
Mike?
Yeah.
We're bringing in news from all over the place. Who else is going to do that? We're connecting the dots. Simon says, I can't connect the dots. Well, we can, brother. There are connections here. There's connections with bad people that had to be fired, with bad people that weren't elected again. It's infecting other places. We need to do something about that locally here, and we're going to need 2 people to do that. 2. If you don't get 2, it's not going to get done. Go ahead, Mike.
In terms of this marijuana thing, they're going to have to come up with some solution for this banking issue. It's going to be too out of control, and states are going to be calculating that a certain amount of a certain percentage of the sales they're not getting a tax on because they're happening tax free. They say that you cannot possibly track every transaction that comes in there, whether they fill out a receipt for something. What are they going to do? Check your video, check your receipt, and then do that for every single transaction that takes place inside that dispensary? There's no way you could do that.
Well, let's put it on a more practical basis, in my opinion. Let's suppose that you work at a place like this. One is, we had somebody that was talking to the Grants Pass City Council recently, was saying, we're finding it really hard to hire anybody in our area because they can't pass the drug tests. So I asked Bree Malarkey, who runs this one in Gold Hill, hello, Dan Mancuso, and also in Ashland. Well, now, what happens when you've got someone who's working for your shop and they've got to pass a drug test? I mean, what's the likelihood that they're going to be able to pass, and they haven't used any drug in 3 weeks?
Okay, but listen.
He has a solution.
Yes, but drug testing policy is typically the policy of the owner of that business. And I cannot see in this particular case that Breeze Botanicals has a drug testing program. I doubt very seriously that they do.
That's her answer. They just don't do it.
Right. Yes, of course. And why would they? Listen, she would expect that maybe the people that are working for her slinging this stuff have some personal knowledge of, the efficacy of their product.
Do you think that people at a bakery occasionally eat a donut?
Yes, I do think that.
Right.
If I worked at a bakery, I would be much fatter than I am now.
The thing is, the first thing that occurred to me just on the side here is that if these companies here locally can't hire people because they can't pass a drug test, then only put a drug test on people who are absolutely essential, and don't test anybody else. Well, we have a 0 tolerance plan. You know what? And no employees.
Yeah, I tend to think that coming down the pike somewhere is going to be some relaxation on that. Since it is a legal product, it would be theoretically like having a glass of wine with dinner, but a glass of wine is out of your system by the next morning. Yes. Whereas if you take a couple hits off a joint, you go in there and it's going to be 30 days.
Well, you may recall there was a story several years ago about a whole squadron of fighter pilots that were grounded, and they couldn't figure out we don't use drugs. They were eating McDonald's burgers.
Oh, was it poppy seeds?
Yeah.
They were making them test positive for heroin or something like that. Yes, I've heard about that.
Well, okay, I get the moral stuff. I get that, okay? But really, I mean...
Well, yeah. Now, however, if these guys actually were doing heroin, that is an issue.
Of course it is. We're going to need to be a little bit flexible. I still worry for the people who they work for some place. They've got to file their taxes, their individual personal taxes. How are they going to account for what they were paid? I mean, I know it sounds a lot to say organized crime, but it is. Right. It's organized and it's criminal in the U.S. Now, how are they going to account for what they were paid? What kind of work do you do? Well, I work at a shop. What kind of shop? The kind of shop where they pay you with cash.
Yeah, right. You know what? It is stupid. That's why, listen, listen, this has tax money behind it. This situation is going to get fixed. You know that it is. This is and listen, if at some point the feds get around to making this thing legal themselves, they're going to want a piece of that pie too. And they'll find out a way to tax, throw a federal tax on it and make a couple of bucks themselves off the thing, and then all of a sudden, all of these banking issues will be out the window, and there won't be any problem with paying employees or any of that stuff.
This is how NASCAR got started. NASCAR, yeah, they were souping up their cars to escape the revenuers.
Yeah, that's right.
They wanted their tax.
Yes, but then prohibition ended and it legitimized all of that instantaneously, whereas you have this other thing. It would be as though you could buy whiskey in one state but not in another.
Yes,
and it was illegal federally.
And then you've seen the video with these fellows here, these ladies here from the Gold Hill City Council that just had nothing positive to say about marijuana. Why, how can we put further restrictions on it? Further restrictions. There was no talk about what to do about a cash crop, and then Steve Rich brought up with them. He said, that if you do a ban, that you don't get to participate, but they had all these moral reasons. You don't get to participate in the income from that. And suddenly everybody was like, quiet.
Yes.
And when we played it back at length, and it's this long, but in television, having a long pause like this is a long time. No, this was like 10 times longer than that. They didn't know what to say. What were they going to do with all their moral arguments? They were going to miss out on the cash.
Well, and that's where this is the interesting thing. This is where you find out how strong is somebody's moral objection.
Yeah.
Are they going to fold for the money? And you know what? Sadly, most of the time, most of them do. I don't have any problem with people who have a moral objection to.
Me either. Okay, I don't smoke it. I get it. Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess you should have been, a little bit better. It's interesting. We were talking about this thing the other day about whether or not they bust people in for this situation. It was the mineral withdrawal meeting there
right,
at the end.
We're going to speak up.
Right. Yeah. Right. At the end, Basker. And we were talking about, are they busting those people in? I don't know if they're busting them in or not or whatever. We didn't see any buses. So then the other day I'm going through my business cards. And when I collect business cards, every once in a while I have to take them out of my wallet and put them in the stack here. I got these stacks of business cards. And I found one from when you and I went over to the motor voter meeting over there in that one there.
This one right here. And the reason why it stands out is because the thing
on the back side.
Yes. And
yes.
It's a bus company.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mike. Tell them about it.
Yeah, and what their main push there is to bus people, give them a ride to the polls, make sure they're voting. Political organizing, and this is where if you want to listen, it's been about 50 years these people been ramping up their operations to get to this level here. So if you're taking the other side of the issue, you're going to have to step it up a little bit, because these guys, they're busing people. These people, half of the people that they are bringing to the places would have no inclination at all to go anywhere and vote and do whatever. They're just, they're getting a free ride to go over there. Who knows what else they're giving them or whatever.
Could stop here before we impose a sales tax.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
They busting them in to make an appearance in Grants Pass. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow there. And they could bus them in, and while they're here, they could do a little shopping before we impose a sales tax. In Oregon.
Yes, right, exactly. But no, what I'm saying is that there are organizations out there that are going, great guns to organize politically. And if you're going to compete with them, you're going to have to start doing some of the same stuff they do.
They're eating your lunch.
They're eating your
even
lunch.
though we had people there who are very outspoken, well, I'm going to say many things. They didn't, did they? They were too afraid to say anything.
Well, and this is just one issue, because there are a number of issues across the spectrum where, the traditionalists or whatever are losing because they are not taking advantage of everything that's available to them.
They have many tools.
They have many tools.
We have trouble getting those guys to come on this show or to talk to us. I don't think I really want to. Hey, we take the risk every night. What's the matter with you? I mean, we risk being wrong all the time and are, okay? But I mean, look, the thing is, to kind of sum it up, because we're running out of time, it's so that we don't take up your whole evening. We want to, but we won't. If these fellas are going to, men and women, are going to put people on buses to take over the polls, you know what's next? France.